Anechka says, "Good evening everyone. Thank you for being here today." I'd like to begin our classes with a simple yet powerful question. What makes someone powerful in myth, and why are powerful women so often feared or punished? Today's lesson is titled Women of Power and Prophecy, from Circe to Cassandra. We will explore the stories of mythological women who possessed wisdom, magic, and foresight. Traits that made them both revered and feared. These women challenge traditional roles, question the limits of fate and free will, and reveal the anxieties of ancient societies about female agency. We will focus on three figures: Circe, Medea, and Cassandra. Each of them stands at the crossroads of power and punishment, truth and tragedy. Let us begin with Circe. She appears in Homer Odyssey, in Book 10, and is the daughter of Helios, the sun god, and Perse, an Oceanid nymph. She is a powerful sorceress who lives on the island of Ai, surrounded by tame lions and wolves, creatures that are, in truth, men that she has transformed with her magic. When Odysseus and his crew land on her island, she invites a group of them to her home. She serves them food laced with a potion, and as they eat, she turns them into pigs using her enchanted staff. Only one crew member, Eurylochus, manages to escape and warns Odysseus. Odysseus is then guided by the god Hermes, who gives him a magical herb called moly to protect him from Circe's spells. Armed with moly, Odysseus confronts Circe, and when her spell fails, she is astonished and eventually offers him hospitality. The transformation of his men is reversed, and he and his crew stay with Circe for a full year, enjoying comfort and luxury.
Priestess says, Harry Comedy. Asteria says, Harry Epherminia.
Minellas Mails. Sairete.
Anechka says, Circe's story is not just about magic, but transformation and so-called self-knowledge. In later myths, Circe is also said to have borne Odysseus a son Telegonus, who would later play a tragic role in Odysseus' fate by accidentally killing him with a spear. Well, back to Circe. She symbolizes female independence, mastery of nature, and the deep ambivalence ancient myth had toward women who wielded power without needing a man. As a side note, in modern literature, such as Madeline Miller Circe, she is reimagined as a deeply human, empathetic character navigating the limits of power and solitude. Now, anyone has questions?
Asteria shakes head.
Lilia says, Lilia, listen. Anechka says, all right then. We will move to Medea then. Another sorceress and a tragic lover. She is a central figure in both mythology and tragedy. She is the daughter of King Aeetes of Colchis and the granddaughter of Helios, the sun god. She is also the niece of Circe and a priestess of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft.
Priestess says, are you worshipping?
Anechka says, Medea is introduced in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts, which is told in Apollonius of Rhodes' Argonautica and later reinterpreted in Euripides' tragedy Medea, 431 BCE. We have a golden fleece in our Zeus temple too, winky face.
Asteria nods.
Anechka says, however, back to the Jason and Argonauts myth. When Jason arrives in Colchis to retrieve the golden fleece, King Aeetes sets him impossible tasks that were yoking fire-breathing oxen, sewing dragon teeth that sprout into armed warriors, and defeating a sleepless dragon. Medea, smitten by Jason and influenced by the gods. Particularly Hera and Aphrodite. Agrees to help him on the condition that he promises to marry her and take her with him. She gives Jason magical ointments and advice to complete the tasks. Then she drugs the dragon guarding the fleece, allowing Jason to escape. To slow down Jason's pursuers, Medea commits a horrifying act. She kills her brother Apsyrtus and scatters his body in the sea, forcing their father to stop and collect the remains. Jason and Medea eventually settle in Corinth, where they have 2 sons. However, Jason breaks his vow and seeks to marry Glossy. The daughter of King Creon of Corinth, to secure a royal future. In some sources she is also named as Creusa. In Euripides' Medea, this betrayal leads to one of the most chilling acts in Greek tragedy. Medea sends Glossy a poisoned robe and crown as a wedding gift, which consumes her in flames. King Creon tries to save his daughter and dies in the process. Medea then murders her two sons by Jason to complete her vengeance. She then escapes in a chariot provided by her grandfather Helios, drawn by dragons. As you can see, Medea is a very complex character. Loyal, brilliant, vengeful, and brutal. Her story touches on themes of immigration, betrayal, motherhood, and the limits of female rage. Is she a monster or a woman driven mad by love and betrayal? This question can answer every one of you to yourself, smiley face. Now we will move to Cassandra. The Cursed Prophetess. Cassandra is the daughter of Priam and Hecuba, the king and queen of Troy. Her story is deeply tragic and rooted in the theme of truth unheard. According to myth, the god Apollo fell in love with Cassandra and offered her the gift of prophecy in exchange for her love. She accepted the gift but rejected his advances. In revenge, Apollo cursed her. As for though she would always tell the truth, no one would ever believe her. Cassandra foresaw many of the tragic events of the Trojan War. She warned the Trojans not to accept the wooden horse left by the Greeks, saying it was a trap. She foresaw the destruction of Troy, the deaths of her family, and her own fate, but no one heeded her warnings. After the fall of Troy, Cassandra was taken as a concubine by Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces. She accompanied him back to Mycenae. There, she was murdered alongside him by Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's wife, who had her own reasons for revenge. Among them Agamemnon's sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia to gain favorable winds for the war. In Aeschylus' Agamemnon, Cassandra's final scenes are really very haunting. She knows she will die and speaks prophetically of the bloodshed to come. One of her final visions was "The house reeks of blood." Her tragedy is that of a woman who sees clearly but is never believed. She is a symbol of wisdom ignored, of warnings dismissed. Often compared today to whistleblowers or victims who go unheard. Now time for some conclusions and reflections. So what do these women share? Circe, Medea, and Cassandra all possess unique forms of knowledge.
The magic of transformation, the cunning of survival, the insight of prophecy.
They all step outside the traditional roles assigned to women in ancient world. And they all suffer for it. Their stories reflect ancient fears of female power, independence, and intellect. But they also reveal admiration, a recognition that such women are unforgettable, worth a story to be told and myth to believe in. In modern times, writers and artists are re-examining these myths. They are telling the stories from the women's perspectives. They ask, what if Circe wasn't a monster? What if Medea was driven by love, not madness? What if Cassandra was the only sane voice in a world ruled by pride? I'd like to leave you with this thought. What would the myths look like if the women, not men, wrote them? Now some questions to the audience, smiley face. Why do you think ancient myths often punish women for using magic or speaking the truth?
Sky says, afraid they could become very powerful?
Anechka says, yes. Punishing these women in myth was a way for ancient cultures to warn against female autonomy and to reassert social norms.
Asteria says, based on what I read back then, women in ancient times held a great importance and were even somehow connected to magics, mostly due to their ability to give birth. From this point of view, they reflected what was considered a natural and divine order. But they also expressed an obscure femininity, kind of dangerous when rejecting or drifting away from that order, and it needed a man's guidance to avoid to become destructive. That mostly explains that ambivalence toward women you spoke about in the beginning.
Anechka says, ancient myths reflect the values, fears, and structures of the societies that created them, many of which were patriarchal sister. I know in Sparta women were treated different, but in all ancient world this was a rule. Women who used magic, like Circe or Medea, or who spoke uncomfortable truths, like Cassandra, defied the traditional roles expected of them to be silent, obedient, and dependent. Lilia says, Lilia think it's very sad.
Asteria says, I don't want to be polemic, but feminist readings of ancient myths are not of my interest and I don't agree with them.
Anechka says, indeed it's.
Asteria says, anyway, anything else was very interesting.
Anejka says, "Alright Asteria, then answer me a simple question. Were these women doomed by the gods, or did their own choices seal their fates?" According to myths.
Asterius says, I already said what I had to.
Anejka says, "Alright then." Lesson summary thought. Today's presented myths reflect patriarchal fears and norms of their time. Women who acted independently, through magic or prophecy, defied expected roles and threatened the order. Punishing them in myth served to reinforce societal control. Yet these stories endure precisely because such women were extraordinary. Today, they serve as reminders of the cost of silencing powerful voices and the enduring impact of those who dared to speak anyway. My sources for today's classes. Homer, The Odyssey, Book 10. Apollonius of Rhodes, Argonautica.
Euripides, Medea.
Aeschylus, Agamemnon, part of the Orestia. Madeline Miller, Circe, 2018. Edith Hamilton, Mythology, 1942. Robert Graves, The Greek Myths, 1955. Barry B. Powell, Classical Myth, Oxford University Press. Jenny March, Cassell's Dictionary of Classical Mythology. Theoi.com, Greek mythology resource. Perseus Digital Library, Tufts University. Anyone has some questions? Thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Smiley face. Class is almost over.
Sky says, sorry, real life call, thanks for the information.
Anechka says, you're welcome, smiley face.
Sky says, bye you all.
Anechka says, well, if nothing else, then we can end the classes here.
Asterius says, Herida, salutes.
Minella says, Eurede, salutes.
Anechka says, thank you all who attended.
Lilia says, "Thank you, Queen." Lilia bows.
Minella says, good night, good weekend.